Hi, my name is Sydney Madden, and I will be talking about the environmental issue of coral bleaching. We have a nice healthy coral reef behind me. We have a few animals. We have a sea turtle. It looks like there might be a snake behind the sea turtle, and a few reef fishes in the background. So we will be going over what coral bleaching is, the effects it has on humans, and hopefully policies we can enact to slow or stop global warming, and that in return will reduce or prevent coral bleaching. So I'm going to share my screen. So again, we'll be talking about coral bleaching. Well, we have to start off by defining what coral bleaching is. So corals are a live animal that are made up of individual organisms called polyps. These polyps are in a mutualistic symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae, algae, where both polyp and algae benefit. So we can see here that the zooxanthellae live within the cell wall of the polyp. So this is a polyp. It looks very similar to this GIF up here that is an individual polyp. It can reach out or retract itself depending on the environmental parameters of if it needs sunlight or nutrition or something like that. But this is an example of a coral colony, and this is a zoomed in microscopic picture of this colony, the sea pansy, the Ranella reniformis. We actually collected this sample right here off the coast of South Carolina in our marine biology lab. And each of these individual white spots are coral polyps. This is a different kind of coral polyp, but not the only kind. It's a specialized coral polyp. But yes, so the algae have a place to live within the polyp, and the polyp has a source of food. So that's the part of this symbiotic mutualistic relationship. About 98% of the products of photosynthesis, which includes glucose, glycerol, and amino acids from the algae, are transferred to the host, the polyp. And the zooxanthellae algae gives corals their color. So, coral bleaching. Corals need to grow in clear, shallow, warm water. More specifically, tropical corals need to grow in clear and shallow water so that zooxanthellae can photosynthesize. They're like tiny plant-like cells or organisms. The coral polyp can grow within a specific range of warm water, but too cold, they won't grow. If it's too hot, that defines coral bleaching, and their transfer of warmer climates to colder climates as global warming makes them move their habitat more northward or southward away from the equator. But for right now, the majority of coral reefs, tropical coral reefs, are in this region right here in the center of the Earth, near the equator. You can see where all the red dots are. Oceanic temperatures changes due to excess heat from greenhouse gas emissions. And those emissions can include anything from sulfate, carbon dioxide, methane, or even water vapor. And as the temperature changes, the coral stresses and expels the algae. So we will watch a video. This was taken at a Queensland University of Technology. The scientists captured coral bleaching processes on video. This coral ejects the algae through pulsed inflation, where the coral colony's body, as you can see here, expands up to 340% of the normal size before violently contracting and spitting out the tiny organisms of zooxanthellae over probably 4 to 8 days. As you can see in the video, you can see it contracting. As it goes on, you can see this middle area. Can't show you, but the middle area is becoming paler and whiter as the algae are extracted and pushed out into the water. So without the zooxanthellae, the coral take on a white and bleached appearance. So as you can see here, that's probably a staghorn coral. So this coral was nice and healthy on the left-hand side, and about a year later, it went through a coral bleaching event and is now white. And you can see the other organisms around it. This is dead coral, so this is what it looks like after it turns this white color, then decomposes and takes on that darker color. So what happens after coral bleaching? The coral colony cannot survive without zooxanthellae, as they provide the majority of food for the coral. If the water does not cool so the algae can recolonize, a coral will die from starvation, and as a result, the coral reef ecosystem will collapse without the coral. It provides a 3D structure for animals to live in and around. The type of animals in this ecosystem can provide a specific role, not just in the coral reef ecosystem, but touches all ecosystems in the marine biome. For example, there are cleaning stations in reefs where cleaner wrasse or shrimp will take turns eating parasites off of clients. The clients can come from the coral reef area or the deep ocean. Some organisms that come from the deep ocean can be manta rays or thrasher sharks, just to name a few. The coral reefs are also important hatcheries and nurseries for the fish as well. So as you can see here, so this left picture is in the Pacific Ocean near American Samoa. This is the reef before coral bleaching event, and then the right-hand side here is coral reef after a coral bleaching event. The center picture here is from right off the coast of Hawaii. As you can see, it's not just in, I mean, it's still the Pacific Ocean, but it's not just in one area, it's widespread. And this right picture here is after a coral bleaching event off of Australia in the Great Barrier Reef, which used to be the most abundant area of coral. It still is, but has gone through majority of a lot of coral bleaching events over the years. So why should we be worried? So as humans, coral reefs are important for the fishing industry, although they cover less than 1% of the ocean. The coral reefs hold over 25% of marine species. They're very high in biodiversity. So that's also how they got their nickname of rainforests of the sea. This area is home to millions of species of fish, crabs, clams, starfish, squid, sponges, lobsters, seahorses, and sea turtles, just to name a few. The fish taken from reefs are a significant food source for more than 1 billion people worldwide. About half of all U.S. fisheries depend on coral reefs for a portion of their life cycle. The reef fisheries in Southeast Asia generate $2.4 billion a year, and in the Caribbean, $395 million a year. And in the U.S., it generates $100 million a year through commercial and recreational fisheries. And worldwide, coral reef fisheries are annually worth $6.8 billion. Coral reefs can also be hotspots for ecotourism. Worldwide, coral reefs generate about $36 billion worldwide in tourism. People in general are just drawn to the ocean and warmer tropical areas where these reefs are found, right in the equatorial region. Coral reefs are also natural storm barriers. They are breakwaters which buffer shorelines from waves and storms. Their rough surfaces and 3D complex structures dissipate the force of incoming waves, which helps prevent flooding, erosion, things like property damage, and of course, loss of life. The U.S. reefs provide about $1.75 billion in ecosystem services, which includes anything from protection from storm surges and destructive waves, employment, and fisheries activities. Coral reef ecosystems are also an important source of new medicines. There are anti-cancer drugs that come from a certain marine algae found in this environment. The mucus of cone snails, which are very nasty if you touch in person, but they can yield a potent painkiller. And deep sea sponges have also shown promising treatments for cancer, such as pancreatic cancer. And finally, coral reefs are important to the economy and society. Without the structure of coral reefs, the entire ecosystem would collapse, as previously mentioned, and the United States, along with the world, would see a loss in food and economic profit. So what policies can be put into place to stop coral bleaching events? So in the end, there are two goals that can help prevent the coral bleaching events. It is a decrease of greenhouse gas pollutants, which will reduce the introduction of greenhouse gases into the oceanic environment, which warms the environment. The other goal is to increase the use of clean energy. This can include harnessing wind energy with wind turbines like you see here, or using hydropower, geothermal energy, solar power, or nuclear energy, just to name a few. There are lots of green energy options out there. So we can use all three types of environmental policies to stop coral bleaching effects by reducing global warming or hopefully stopping global warming. So an example of a transferable permit would be setting quotas on carbon dioxide pollutants. The US has done well in decreasing the amount of carbon dioxide emitted annually, going from 20.8 metric tons per capita in 1980 to 16.1 metric tons per capita in 2018. While the decrease of 4 or so metric tons per capita is great, it's not enough overall, and that's just the US. That doesn't include other countries that are increasing their carbon dioxide emissions or other greenhouse gases as well. So more stringent emission standards have to be set in order in the US and around the world to make a large enough impact on the greenhouse gases reduction, on the reduction of greenhouse gases. A few examples of market-based policies can include putting a tax on farmers who have an excess amount of cows. Research and regulations would have to be put into place to determine what the cutoff point is for amount of cows. With fewer cows, less methane would be released into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas. This is significant as about 15 to 18% of human-induced greenhouse gases come from livestock, mainly cows, through methane. Another example of a market-based policy could be giving subsidies to solar panel businesses. So along with giving subsidies, there can also be a tax deduction for businesses or people with solar panels. Solar panels benefit the environment as households run off the clean, green energy instead of getting that energy from power plants that might be running off of fossil fuels or other kinds of quote unquote dirty energy means. And the last policy that can be enacted falls under command and control. There are set limits for pollution emissions or mandates that specific pollution control technologies that must be used. An example could be Maersk Line Limited. They were required to put scrubbers on their smokestacks in order to prevent excess carbon emissions from entering the atmosphere from their engines. These emission standards, not just in the shipping industry, but around the country or worldwide, they cannot be overlooked and must be held true. Cutting corners will not help the people and the environment in the long term. So in the end, combining all three strategies and types of environmental policies, we can slowly decrease our carbon emissions as well as other greenhouse gases, and that will in return help reduce global warming, and even further down the road will help reduce coral bleaching events. Thank you.